Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming out on this, sweltering Sacramento evening for our Emerging Artist Show featuring Anne, Bill, Angel, and Dimitri. I'm not messing with the last name. Some are easy, some aren't. Anyway, Bill is not feeling well this evening, so I have a printout about his work, and I'm going to leave it here on the table. But we are fortunate enough to have Anne Delcourt here, and she's going to start us off.
Good.
By the way, my name is Nisa Hayden. I'm one of the curators here, along with Cynthia Liu. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Nisa. Thank you, Cynthia. So thanks, Cynthia, for coordinating this. So I feel super honored to be part of this Emerging Artist Show. And what a diverse group. There's something for everyone in this room. It's super exciting. I've been doing glass mosaics for about 2 years. And I started to make a little glass mosaic flower, and I haven't stopped since. So I've really come to love the medium. I've been doing a lot of work learning about old glass and new glass, the chemistry behind it, the fact that glass is not a solid. So it's actually a crystalline structure, and it's something that's always moving, even though that's imperceptible. It's a marvelous medium to work with. I've had some terrific coaching. I see Phil Teefy has just arrived. He owns Rainbow Glass. He and his wife Hazel own Rainbow Glass up on Auburn Boulevard. So I'm in their store like every week or a couple times a week. But great mentoring from Phil. So I always appreciate that, Phil. I have 8 pieces here tonight. My series that I'm showing tonight is called California from Above. So there are 3 of my pieces that are here. All of these are based on aerial photography over the Central Valley of California. So these would all have been taken from at least 10,000 feet or above. And I actually have the inspiration photographs. If you're interested, I have them with me. They're also in the binder that's here on this table. So I use those photographs as inspiration. My grandparents were farmers in upstate New York and in South Dakota, so I have some love of farming. So this was a really fun series for me to do. I've also got family members who work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, so I'm always hearing about the threats to agriculture. But my pieces are really a celebration of the land, of the farmers, and we live in really the most prolific region in the world, and it's super exciting. So I'll review a couple of highlights from some of the pieces that I have here. So this one is called The Farmer Says Hi. Some people get it and some people don't. But so if you're standing at a distance, you might be able to see that the word hi is in the crops right here. So depending on how the farmer cuts the crops, he or she might be able to communicate with those who are flying above their farm. So I thought that was kind of a fun thing. This also has a glass rod here. You can all touch the glass. So any of my work, you're welcome to touch, and I encourage you to touch the glass. So a lot of this has vintage glass in it, lots of textures. There are glass rods. Some of it has blown glass in it, so it's super fun. And you can't touch any of the other art in here. But that's one of the things that helps you interpret the art here. So this obviously is crops. I've added irrigation, so there's actually a glass rod here and some well tanks. This is an interesting, the geometry for the glass mosaics is something that I just fell in love with. So anytime you're looking at crops, there's always amazing patterns. And so for someone who's doing glass mosaics, it's a marvelous subject matter. So if you come here, you can touch the little watermelons that are in the back of the 2 pickup trucks. So there are a couple little glass beads there. This one is called Tilling Time. So this is a piece of blown glass. You can hear the texture in that. And I found that piece of glass and I knew exactly what to do with it. So this is rough land that hasn't been tilled and a tiny little tractor. So I have a glass saw so I can make tiny, tiny cuts. I also score the glass and break the glass. So there are lots of ways to manipulate the glass. So over here on this wall near the door, there's a piece that just won a blue ribbon in the state fair. So I'm a huge fan of the state fair, but thank you. So again, these are rice fields. So I want you to think when you're driving across the Yolo bypass, those rice fields, if you could see them from above, they would look like this. So I've got rice fields here. I also have rice fields on the other wall. There's another one over there by the flower fields. This one is the one that won the blue ribbon. So again, great textures. I encourage you to touch the glass. So this one would have been done at noon because there aren't very many shadows here. So the one over on the bottom, that's the grid, you'll notice the little shadows of the trees. So that would have been earlier or later in the day. So those are fun little details when I'm working with the glass. The one against the back wall is called the view from seat 12A. So if you've flown into the Sacramento International Airport, this is the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. My favorite glass on that is actually the water glass. So if you run your hand up and down that dark blue glass, you will feel the waves that are in that glass. So super fun there. And then there are a couple more pieces around the corner here that are the flower field and another rice field. So we're celebrating the surroundings that we have here in California. I'm glad to put out this collection. So I have several other collections that I'm working on. I'm new at it and I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm glad to be here among the other artists. So I feel super honored. So thank you. Yeah. Yes,
Angel
please.
is going to speak about her work. She's all the way from Fresno.
Yes. Thank you, Anna. That was beautiful. I'm a huge fan of agricultural work because I live right in the middle of it. I am from Fresno, the Central Valley, and a lot of my work actually has to do with being from Fresno and the experiences I've had or my family has brought to Fresno. So my name's Angel Lesnikowski. I like to explain how to say my last name because no one can say it. If everyone's watched Monsters, Inc., that green guy with the horns and the eyeball, if you can say Mike Wazowski, you can say Lesnikowski. So if you have to approach me and talk to me or talk about me, that's how you practice my name. So I have two bodies of work in the show. I have my cigarette box project, and I have my large format pieces. My large format work has to do with my biographical background and comparing it to real world situations. My mom is an Iraqi woman. She's Assyrian, so she's been prosecuted because she's Christian Assyrian, and she's lived through multiple wars and multiple conflicts being from Northern Africa. And then my dad, he is a conservative white cowboy from LA. So his perspective is completely opposite from her perspective, and they have both been contributing to opposite sides of wars of America. And my dad, I'll talk about his fear, and then I'll talk about my mom's fear, but I was raised with fearmongers. As a little kid, I was always aware of death being a thing, and death with humans, not just pets. And it's because of this relationship my parents had developed with the normalcy of death and their backgrounds, my dad owning farmland or American wars or his brothers passing away or my mom and all the wars she's seen. And there was a patriarchal aspect to it too. So there's lots of conversations I can have about feminist theory and what went on in the home. But the fear-mongering with my dad, he taught me to fear my body, my home, my country. My mom taught me to fear my body, my home, and the world. Don't trust other countries when it comes to conflict in our country. So, as an example, the piece over there, it's called War on Agriculture. It has to do with me being 14 years old and my dad and my brother having an argument about Putin releasing his map. And this map described all the pinpoints. I think there were 25. I could be wrong. I'm sorry, I don't have my sources with me. But there were 25 pinpoints of California that if he wanted to, he would bomb because we produce a large amount of agriculture in the rest of the United States. So in order to wipe out a lot of people, you take away their food source. And then another thing to that is I lived by the airport of Fresno all my life. So the Fresno airport has a military base on it. That military base was one of the #1 targets because we're not only agriculture, but we're also military. And so I grew up from a young age thinking, oh, I could be gone next week. That's crazy. Because someone decided to press a button and just wipe out a group of people. And this was a fear I had as a kid. So I've developed into an adult that now has a fear of everything, but in a sense of it's normal. So I'm scared of walking the street at night. I'm scared of not being here tomorrow because someone decided to bomb us. The broad range of that fear I have with the Grim Reaper appearing at my front door. So with that being said, in the fear-mongering, the Grim Reaper is my main focus in all of my work. I don't like presenting the Grim Reaper as everyone's seen it, which is the cloak with the skull, which has historical context, but I think it's too cliche, and I didn't want my work to fall under that sort of genre. So instead, I decided to bring out the Grim Reaper in different forms. So I start with the scythe, which is in the mythology, it was supposed to be, when you use a scythe in farming, it's supposed to reap the crop. So you're supposed to cut the crop with a scythe. So it's supposed to be used as a useful tool, but the Grim Reaper, he reaps souls, so people passing away. And so I use the image of the scythe and it having a point, and I repeat that in a lot of my pieces. So for this one, it would be the birds and the moon. For this one, it would be the metal writing, and then the bird's wings, and then possibly the flowers. For that one, it would be the beaks of the vultures and the moon in the background. For this one, it would be the claw. Or I was talking to someone about this earlier. I even chose wheat because I wanted the scythe to show up in the wheat's patterning. So all of the work repeats kind of that Grim Reaper silhouette, the symbol. And then all of the work is narrative. So I just talked about war on agriculture. I have work about women's rights because a lot of my work is reactionary. I make it currently to what's going on in the world at the moment. So I try to do whatever I'm fearful of now, and then also bring biographical aspects to it so I can speak on those topics. So a lot of the work, the majority of the body of work was created at the end of 2024 last year when the presidency was, the election was happening. And everyone was feeling fears in different forms. Whatever side you're on, however you're feeling, everyone was fearful of something. I was fearful of women's rights being taken away and war happening. Me and my mother fully believed World War III was going to start after January. So my work focused on that. And so there's a lot of work about war, and there's a lot of work about women's rights. This one's about Roe v. Wade being overturned and the women of America being affected. The vultures in the background representing the 3 Supreme Court justices that Trump had brought on. This piece is about the starvation in Gaza right now, how there's not enough aid reaching the people in Gaza. I'll explain this one last. This piece is about general war. If a nuke ever drops, you put your thumb up. If it's bigger than your thumb, you're probably going to get affected by it. That one is she's not even running. Birds are because they don't understand, but she's not running because why would she? She knows. And then this one is my most recent piece. I am so overwhelmed with my fear right now. I cannot depict a narrative. So I decided to describe me just endlessly falling, and all of us feeling that feeling of that doomsday, that fear. And I know Anna had brought up such a pleasant version of the world and the positivity with agriculture and our growth. And I just want to say my work does appreciate all of that. It's just I'm talking about the fear that I have of it disappearing. So it's a bit negative, and I'm ending her talk with a negative aspect of it. Okay, and then my cigarette box project. So this is a passion project. This one has to do with accessibility. I wanted to create a project that was inexpensive and could be produced on a large scale minimally, if that makes sense. Not because of the size, but because it was quite easy to produce. Because I think I'm just a little psychotic for how many times I wanted to create these landscapes. But I started collecting cigarette boxes when I was really, really young. That was part of the whole death thing. Like, I knew they were killing people slowly. So when I was 11, I asked my grandma for her cigarette boxes. And then from there, my coworkers, my dad, my best friends at the time, everyone was giving me their cigarette boxes. So I have all these different personalities of these people I love being around. My work does not critique smoking. I do want to say that. It's because my grandma died at 89 years old with the healthiest lungs, and she's been smoking since she was 14. Not sure how that happened. I don't believe the cigarettes didn't affect her, but I don't feel like I can claim anything in the the medical sense. So my work actually critiques the idea of consumerism and the obsession with something that gives you comfort, because I gained comfort from people that smoked. Clearly, I collected all of their cigarette boxes. And then my biggest collection of cigarette boxes is Seneca Silver 100s, because my husband, who I met, 3.5 years ago? We got married a year later, and we've been married for about 2 years, gonna hit 2 years soon. His grandpa smoked about a pack and a half a day. So I don't remember when we started taking them out of his trash can and then asking permission, but we started collecting them about 2 years ago. I have over 600 cigarette boxes, and I've only been collecting them for 2 years. So you can imagine how much this man smokes. He's a disabled veteran. All he does all day is sits in a bed, watches TV, and smokes his pack. Not anymore. He recently had to quit because he got evicted for smoking so much. So he's now smoking e-cigarettes, and they smell a lot better. But I can't collect his cigarette boxes anymore. But through the consumerism and the idea of it and the fear everyone has towards cigarette boxes, I reinterpreted it. And you know how my parents are, you know how I was raised. Both of them come from desert backgrounds. And so at a very layman's point, without understanding their biographical context, I decided to say that the desert brings fear. There's something mysterious and fearful about the desert. So I started obsessing over the landscapes of the desert. At first, when I first started the project, 50 boxes, I was using reference imagery that I either collected, found online, collected from family members, whoever would gift them to me, and I was referencing that imagery. But after 50 boxes, I'm not even kidding you, it turned into an equation in my head where I didn't have to look at an image anymore. So the reason why some of these look a little funky is because I made up 80% of these boxes. And they're painted with 3 colors and white, so red, yellow, blue, and white. All of the mixtures 80% of the mixtures are completely from my head, just learning, putting the right bush next to the right rock, with the right landscape in the background, with the right sunset, and it ended up most of the time being successful because I'd studied them for so long, because I've been painting landscapes past this project, clearly because they're in the larger landscapes. I've been studying them for so long that it just became simple for me to produce over and over again. And then I was not planning to show this project. This was supposed to be a passion project. It was supposed to stay hidden away and just be little studies, because I didn't have to buy canvases. And then I found a very fun way of framing my work. I worked for the Fresno Art Museum for a period of time, and Charles Gaines, if anyone's seen his work in person, I'm a huge fan of how he puts his work in these beautiful glass cases and then he'll paint on top of them. So then I found a way for me to kind of mimic the same thing with his work. So that's the only reason why they're formatted that way. It turned them into specimens according to his process and why he used glass cases in his pieces. So that is my work. Do we want to do questions?
If anybody has any questions, please.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
So
I'm going to stand in front of the fan.
being a sculptor, I'm wondering, is the flat, you have a flat thing in each of these, a flat image in each of these paintings. What is that? Like the wood there is not, it's just a...
Your question. I didn't explain the process behind my large format mixed medias. So I wanted to be able to play with my work. I was a traditional fine art oil painter, so everything had to be realistically depicted to a T. That's how I was trained. And I realized through many critiques of not doing good enough that I was never going to be good enough because I was trying to depict a world that never existed. And I was trying to talk about stuff people don't relate to. So at some point, my professor had said that my scenes look like theater scenes. And so after he had said that, I realized that I don't want to depict these theater scenes. I don't want to depict realism. I want to have fun with my work, play with my work, and that's when I started working with ignorant style. Does anyone know what that is? If anyone's heard of ignorant tattoos, they're like the silliest looking tattoos where it's purposely drawn in a way that looks like a doodle, but it's forever on someone's skin. I was very inspired by tattoo artists, and I got really into tattoos at the time. And so I started working with the ignorant style and going back and forth and having that duality in my work of going from realism, fine art painting, to then blending in the ignorant style to have fun with it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. It's great.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all for listening to me.
So, well, anyway, I want to welcome all of you to the gallery, and thank you for coming very much. My name is Bill Henry. I did the paintings on the wall that are the landscapes. My paintings, surprising to some, follow a pretty common formula for landscape paintings. They include a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. And since I'm from Southern California, it makes sense to me to include mountains, some sort of water element like ocean or a river or stream, hills. And so by following that formula, it's pretty easy for me to create something that is made up. I do this 9 times out of 10. So I want to talk to you about how I do that with my painting chairman of the board. Let's start with the foreground. You know, I better have the pointer because you're going to be a day late.
No, I was going
Okay.
to.
Okay. So for the foreground, I've divided it into 3s. I've got the back bank here, I've got the river here, and then the ground in front. That's the horizontal third of it. Then the vertical part is framed by the trees. And the outside trees are very important. The outside trees block the viewer's eye from some sort of element that I might put in, something that moves and moves their eye right off and onto somebody else's painting. The last thing I want to do is have somebody else's painting that they're looking at. So the trees here will block the eye. The eye will roam over to here and then bounce right back to the middle, where the middle trees frame the focal point, the bear. The bear is waiting for his pack. There's the jaguar, the red panda, a couple of cheetahs. Let me ask you older people this question. Now that you know that this is a pack, what do you think the chairman of the board, the title of the painting is a reference to? He's waiting for his pack. The bear is waiting for his pack. What if I told you that the bear is Frank Sinatra?
It's the Rat Pack.
It's the Rat Pack. So then you've got Dean Martin here. You've got Sammy Davis Jr. being very cool over here, and Peter Lawford and Joey Bishop. Okay, so this is the foreground. The middle ground is my favorite part of the painting. That's where I get to go crazy with color and geometric shapes and lots of movement, that sort of thing. I like flat in my paintings. All the hills are flat. They're populated with repeating geometric elements, in this case squares. They have lots of movement to them. And generally, the colors of the squares are the complement to the color of the hill. Then the second element that I often add in my middle ground is some sort of water feature like this. The glacier here guides the eye either back and forth or down into the middle of the painting or up to the painting. Definitely my favorite part of the painting. The background is where the mountains are. And the background is often contrasted. I often contrast it with the middle ground. The background has straight lines that frame the mountains and at times frame triangles. And then the straight lines are in juxtaposition with the curved lines. I like that. Then the mountains also have depth to them, both through perspective, but also through the shadows. And that creates depth, which is in contrast to the flatness of the hills down here. So there's a couple of things I want to point out. First is, people ask me, how do you make the squares? It's very easy for me to tell you. It's much harder for me when actually doing it. I lay out a grid of tape. Sounds pretty simple. Grid of tape's made of squares. But if you're off just a little bit, then farther down along the line, you'll be off a whole lot. And so it's tough to get the tape straight up and down perfectly, but they have to be the squares have to be perpendicular with or parallel with the side of the painting. The second problem that I run into with the squares is by using tape, paint will seep underneath the tape and ruin the squares. Took me a long time to figure out how to fix that, which is I use a clear drying acrylic medium, which then forms a barrier between the tape and the painted hill, and then I apply the color to the squares, and then pull off the tape, and voila, I have a repetitious pattern that has lots of rhythm to it and lots of movement. And I like that very much. The second thing I want to point out to you is that wherever the painter is standing is where the viewer stands. So in most landscapes, the painter is standing on the outside looking in. So I, the painter, and you, the viewer, are looking in rather than being part of the scene. Let me ask you a question. How many of you take selfies? You're lying, not lying over there. Lying over there. Yes, never. Let me ask you something. Why do you take selfies? What's the purpose of a selfie?
To get yourself in the picture.
Yeah, to get yourself in the picture. If we're standing outside here, well, I don't know, but if you're like me, I want to be in the action. Okay, that's why we take selfies, to put ourselves in the action. So it got me to thinking, how can I put myself, and therefore you, the viewer, into the painting itself? So let's go over here and let me show you what I've come up with so far. This painting is called Hiding in Plain Sight, and then in parentheses, not the fox. Most artists and scholars say the purpose of art, whether it be visual art or dance or music, whatever, is to evoke some sort of emotion from the viewer. It seems to me that if we are inside the picture, it is much easier for us to have some sort of emotional connection than if we're outside the picture. Color can do that. Color comes out. I tend to use bright colors that come toward us, but they also then pull us back in. So if you look here, this is different from what I've normally done. I've taken the tree and made the roots down here somewhere. Okay, so as the painter, I'm standing right next to the roots. Therefore, you are too. Imagine if this were 6 feet tall and our knees were right to here. Then we'd definitely be able to see ourselves in the painting. Why is this important? Well, a painting kind of is incomplete if nobody responds to it emotionally. If people take a look at this and just keep right on walking, then really this is nothing more than a bunch of paint on a piece of wood. Somehow, I want the viewer to feel what I feel. So, I'm trying to put myself in there to make it easier for the viewer to feel what I have felt. Any questions?
How do you choose the colors? Because these are not necessarily the colors that would be in nature. Not the intensity.
I choose the colors primarily the ones that are emotional, have some sort of emotional connection. I make some sort of emotional connection to the colors. It is, I'm not a fauvist. I wouldn't say I go that far, although I do have some streaks of it in here. It's pretty unexpected, surprising colors. But I do react, and have since forever, since I was a teenager, to color. And then I discovered that I react to geometry as well. So really, I'm making the painting that pleases me, and my hope is that it'll connect with other people. Not everyone. Not everyone is a romanticist that favors color over, the line. Any other questions? If you did have a question, what would it be? All right, well, if you have any questions, I'm here, and ask me. Come on up and ask, and we can discuss any of the paintings. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more artist talk. This is Dimitri. He also works for us, and we're showing his work this month as well. So we're going to hear what he has to say about it.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming. Appreciate you coming out and supporting the arts tonight. I want to thank Matt and Nisa and Cynthia and Stephen, who regularly do this every month, and giving me a chance to show some of my work. This is the first time I've ever shown, so forgive me for stuttering a little bit. I think the best place to start is to say that painting and drawing is a meditative exercise for me. I'll take a piece of canvas and work on it for a month or two. I'll set it up in my room and throw a little piece of color on there and then work with it and try to see what develops. And typically it ends up being a story of what I've been experiencing over the month or two. And they're typically a surprise every time. So I guess the best way to start is to describe the process that I've come to do. You'll see they all kind of mimic each other, and that there are a lot of different colors all at once. And this is kind of a personal story and a strange story to tell people, so forgive me if it sounds that way, but it is the truth. About 5-6 years ago, so I've drawn and painted ever since I was a kid. It was an excuse to be by myself and to draw. But about 5 or 6 years ago, as I was going to sleep at night, I had a dream as I was going to sleep. And my field of vision was just static. There's, television, snow, nothing else could see, nothing else. But as I sat with it, it started to morph into shapes. And it became, I saw a dragon, only by it revealing itself by the way it was pushing itself in the form. So I could see the static, but as it was pushing in and out of the static, it revealed itself. And so that impression has informed all of my work ever since. So I'll start with a piece, I'll throw a form, a color, a splash, and then work with it to develop something. About 6 months ago, I had got a compass and was working on mandalas. And I had developed several, but they look so typical. You know, they had the 4 shapes, the little circles and stuff. And I threw this one down, and I began to work with it. And I continued to work with it. I continued to work with it. And over time, it became a symbol to me of our own personal experience. That we live in our life, we have these experiences, and we struggle with the consternation of the day, all the things that we have to deal with, all the things, but we still continue with them. In the same vein over here, each piece I have, well, typically has a frame around it. I use the frame to describe a discrete moment, and in this one here, you can see that all the colors are cacophonous. They're abstract and forced, but we're all looking for some peace of mind. And so the thought was that even in our daily existence, with all the things that we're dealing with, we try to find a point in time where we can calm ourselves and try to find some way of navigating a day. And so this one I call clarity, and that when we can find that place, we should sit there and give ourselves time to reflect on the experience around us, and we'll start to see that there's a pattern, and that pattern offers us a way to navigate the difficulties of the day. So this piece here is a semi-reflective mirror to try to break that fourth wall and involve the audience to say, look at and see themselves inside that and find some clarity in their day. And in the same vein, much like the drawing or the experience of all the static, it came to realize that we are all living in a field of energy. We know that that nothing is concrete. The physics of the day, we understand it as everything is energy and constantly vibrating. And so I named this "All Things Are Infinite" to appeal to Aldous Huxley's statement when the doors of perception are cleansed, all things will appear as they are, infinite. And so the idea was to say, well, if all things are infinite, we can't experience that infinity. We can only know about it. It's an abstraction. We try to engage it, but it's only ever be an abstraction. So this idea that the frame is our perspective on the infinity of the chaos around us. So again, it tries to bring that sense of calmness in the sea of conflict. And then if I may, to bring you over to this one over here, the same theme, a cacophonous experience. We're all in the fields of energy, but we live in a cyclical environment. The world goes around the earth, goes around the sun. We live day in, day out. We have a cycle of life, and we live in shadow. We have the nighttime, the dreams, and then the daytime. So it's this kind of a vision of my vision of yin and yang. The dark shadows, and then the light, the dog star of the sun is the dog day. And our daily experience is traveling that Ouroboros of day, of night, darkness, our subconscious, our consciousness, and it's back and forth in those two fields. This one I had in the State Fair in when was it, 2020? And this was an exercise for me in that I just read an article about mandalas, and mandalas are drawings in the Hindu and Buddhist philosophy that depict the hierarchy of their perspective of reality. That has the gods and the semi-gods, and as you go, they have a storyline that depicts their reality. And I thought, well, in America, we have so many varying cultures, we have so many different paradigms, we have so many different archetypes. What would an American mandala look like? I can't appeal to a common mythology because we are so different, but we're all human. We all have an experience in the daily life. So the idea was to draw this box here that you can see is a cube, and then the shoulders to suggest a head. And then within it is a hypercube, which is a mathematical formula that describes time. And it's in the computer simulation, you'll see it on computers, it's a square or a cube that enlarges to subsume a larger cube around it. So you can see that this is the smaller one, and the hypercube animated will enlarge to engross this one, and then that one grows up. So it is a repetitive pattern of the smaller eating the larger. And then within it, I have, again, a symbol of yin and yang, two triangles of opposite colors. And I imagine them wrestling to control or to touch three of the six sides of the cube, so they're constantly wrestling. So then within, I also have frames to suggest paradigms. So this person lives within this hypercube of dealing daily with our experiences, but is forced to only be able to look at the reality around us using our senses. You know, it's vision or smell or stories or assumptions that person can only see a particular part of the reality around it. So it becomes an American mandala in that Americans are living this environment. We live in our day in, day out. And we try to encompass that experience into a narrative that is our own life. So it becomes an American mandala. And then just lastly, the one back over there, hello, is, I titled it Signal to Noise. And the idea is that, again, with the cacophony of noise, television, media, people talking over you, all that noise conflicts with messages, and that even the most heartfelt, true outreach can be lost and damaged because of the noise around us. So I imagine this is the cacophony of the symbol around us. This is the message someone has sent to us. This is the intent of the message, but it all could be lost in the chaos of the reality around us. And then again, I have shards of mirror to try to break that fourth wall to bring the viewer in so that they can see themselves. But even in that seeing themselves, the viewer is fragmented. Again, I've chosen to sign each piece with a glyph and make it a part of the painting. And each one you'll see is the same pattern, but drawn differently. So my hope is that a viewer would look at it and try to repeat the pattern visually. And by doing that, we'll see that it suggests movement. And each one is a little bit different, that you'll see that this line is above this one, or the S kind of swirls in and out. And the idea is to engage a reader, or a viewer, and to ask to control the way they look at the piece to such a point that they become locked in repeating that pattern. I remember seeing a sculpture at a gallery once, and it was a piece of granite that had been sculpted into an Ouroboros. And forgive me if you don't know, or if you do know, for those who don't, an Ouroboros is a ribbon that's twisted upon itself. So you can go, if you follow it all the way around the circumference, you would never run into the same path. It's a singular path, but you end up running the whole thing. And so I looked at that, and with my vision in my head, I followed that path. And there was something about the gravity of the weight of that piece, the granite, that I followed the path, and my mind just kind of did it again as I walked away. It was just an intuitive flash. And so what I hoped is that would be drawn into the viewer again with these, and in so doing kind of refresh the viewer from looking at this static and recognizing that every line on here was intended. That I hope that the viewer would see every paintbrush to know that every drawn paintbrush was intentional. And so that one viewer would look at this, there would be some dialogue between the signature and the painting itself.